Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. As we get into 2 Corinthians chapter 5, we have to keep in mind that it runs on the heels of chapter 4 of 2 Corinthians, where we read in verse 18, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen, for the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And then chapter 5 begins with the word for, tying it to the previous verse. It says, for we know that if the earthly tent, which is our house, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Paul talks about the human body as a tent, as a temporary dwelling place. And I find it interesting that it's the Apostle Paul who makes this analogy, because he himself was a tent maker. And I'm sure as he was constructing tents and making tents, that even the most elaborate and beautiful tents he made, while he was making them, he had to recognize the fact that they were just temporary. That they were not permanent structures. They possibly wouldn't even last a person their entire lifetime. But were useful in the sense that they gave people mobility and allowed them to dwell in places that they normally wouldn't be able to, but would not be the type of place that a person would live in permanently. And Paul kind of borrows from that idea and talks about the human body. And it's again in the context of not looking at what is temporal, but what is eternal. Not what is seen, but what is not seen. What is seen is temporal, but what is not seen is eternal. And he talks about the fact that these earthly bodies that we have are just like temporary tents that will be replaced in a sense, or as we read from other places, will be transformed into more permanent structures. And this really resonates with me because I grew up camping. My dad took me camping quite a bit as a child. I was in Boy Scouts. And one thing you realize when you're camping is the fact that this tent that you're in, whether you're in a tent because you're on a hiking trail or you're at some type of campsite, you know that that tent isn't really there to be a permanent structure. You're appreciative of the tent. You're glad that you have a tent while you're camping. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, eventually you're going to pack up that tent and you're going to go to your permanent residency. You're going to go to your house, to the building that you live in. And that's a good analogy for the human body as it is in the physical state. We're here in these bodies for a season, for a little while. We're camping out here in this earth, or on this earth, in these human bodies, to glorify God, to serve Him, to bear fruit for the kingdom, to have faith in God, to overcome temptation, to pass the trials and tests that God brings our way. But it's just a temporary situation. Eventually, we're going to get to our eternal destination. And that's what we look forward to. And so we don't get caught up in the temporary things that we're dealing with here on this earth, Paul would say, but we look past those things and realize that there's a more permanent structure waiting. Even on the most difficult hikes and the most difficult camping expeditions we went on when I was a child, when things got hard and things got rough, it was always a little bit more bearable, knowing that, well, it's just temporary. We just got to get through the weekend, or we just got to get through this week. Eventually, we're going to get home. We're going to get to the comforts of home. We're going to get to a place where we won't be dealing with the elements and the different things that we're dealing with presently. It was always a comfort knowing that we have home waiting for us. And that's an encouragement for us today as well, as Christians. It's difficult in this earthly dwelling. Matter of fact, he talks about that later on in verse 4, where he says, for indeed, while we are in this tent, we groan, being burdened, because we do not want to be unclothed, but to be clothed, so that what is mortal will be swallowed up by life. Paul didn't sugarcoat how difficult life is in this earthly tent. He says that we groan and we're burdened while we're in this temporary tent. But we know that we have the hope that this mortal body, this temporary body, will be swallowed up by life. That we will eventually end up in an eternal dwelling. One in which there is no sickness, no death, no sorrow, but one that is strong, that is powerful, that is imperishable, incorruptible. Something that goes far beyond our comprehension or our imagination. And that's what we long for, and that's what we look for. So as we're going through this life, and we perhaps lament the fact that our bodies are so frail, oftentimes, that we are so susceptible to certain types of viruses or diseases or injury or any other type of thing. Let's remember that they're just tents. Just like tents are susceptible to damage and the different things that might come upon them through use and through the elements and nature, so our bodies are the same way. But these are not our permanent dwelling places as they are in the current state. They will be transformed into eternal dwelling places, into buildings, and we'll have an eternal home with God forever. And that is our hope as Christians. So let's be encouraged by that today as we do our reading. Let's be encouraged by the fact that God has given us a hope beyond just this earthly existence. And praise Him for it, worship Him for that, but be all the more diligent in serving Him while we are in these earthly tents. So with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.